This is how to write an effective summary. Make sure that you have your guided notes with you, and you need also a highlighter as well as something to write with. If you don't have those things, go grab them. Obviously, I am still recording from my house, so it might get interesting. Throughout your schooling, not just Allison, but high school, trade school, college, wherever it is that life takes you, you're going to need the ability to summarize. Whether this is verbally or actually like physically writing something, you're going to need to have the ability to tell people what's going on without completely like drowning on. I don't know how many of you guys have been like trying to tell your parents a story or your adult a story, and they're like, oh my God, just get to the point. Can you please just get to the point? And you're sitting there thinking like, I am telling you, but like you've kind of taken this like roundabout way. So when people need a summary of something, they just want to like hit, like just give me the bare minimum. Because when you talk about a summary and the whole thing is a summary is literally just a significant reduction of the original source. So let's say I go and watch a movie and the movie is like 3 hours long. That's a really long movie, but let's say that it's a super long movie, right? I don't want to sit and listen to a summary that is also 3 hours long. I don't even want to listen to you tell me a summary of the story that might be 30 minutes long. I really just want like should I see it or should I not? Should I read the book or should I not? Like just a very significant reduction of the original source. Remember, as you are watching this, you should be pushing pause and writing things down. Oops, I am in the way. I think if I come over here, that should work. Oh, maybe not. All right, so I really need to stop saying all right, so we'll work on that. When you're writing an effective summary, you need to make sure that you follow the main the guidelines that we've set forth. So we're going to determine the main idea of the whatever we just read or watched. That y'all, this is just, hey, we're going to determine the central idea, right? Once we determine that central idea, we're going to write one sentence, just that one sentence that captures that central idea, that main idea. When we have that sentence that captures the main idea, it's almost like we are doing the lessons that we just finished, like lessons, whatever it is, 2, 3, and 4. Those lessons were all about that one sentence, creating that one sentence. Once we have the one sentence, we are going to kind of go back and review what we have read or what we watched. We're going to like think back to it, and we're going to note any major areas of evidence that the piece kind of shows us. If you're saying, hey, this was about Harry Potter and how he actually is the bad guy or something, like you're going to have to go back and prove to me that that was actually what the piece was about. When you get that, then you're going to write a sentence that communicates the gist of each of those major areas. If you have, let's say you're reading in social studies and it has all of those like subheadings, you're going to want like a sentence for each one of those subheadings. So if you have 12 subheadings, then you would end up having like 13 sentences, because you would have the one sentence that captures the whole central idea, and then you would have a sentence for each one of those like little like you're saying this is the main idea of this subgroup and this subgroup and this subgroup. When you are summarizing, there are some major problems that kind of students run into quite a bit. So let's talk about trying to avoid some very specific problems. So you're going to want to avoid plagiarizing. Plagiarizing is anything that is not your actual work. If it didn't come from your brain to your hands and then onto the paper or onto the computer screen, then you've plagiarized from somewhere. This includes like AI generators. So I don't know if y'all have heard about that, but if you're using an AI generator, that's not your work. That's a computer's work. So technically you are plagiarizing from a computer. So when you are writing, you want to make sure that you avoid plagiarizing. It helps to kind of just not look at whatever it is that you're trying to summarize. That makes a pretty significant difference. Oh, my children are here. Hang on. Apologies. Had to break up a small fight, and it's still happening. Stanley, stop.
What? It's doing up and up and
Y'all. When you are writing a summary, you do not get to put your own opinion. So whether you like it or you don't, it's null and void. All you're doing when you're writing a summary is you're saying, this is what the article was about, or this is what the book was about, this is what the movie was about. You don't get to say, I really liked it. You don't get to say, I agree. You don't get to say, I disagree. Anytime that you see this happen on a state assessment or ACT, SAT, whatever. I told you I was recording from home. Anytime you see this happen on any of those, like, formal testing situations, if it has an opinion in it, it's probably wrong. Remember, I'm saying the word probably because that might be the best choice. Like, if the other choices aren't even related to what you've just read, then it's probably the best answer if it does have an opinion. However, when you are writing a summary, you don't get to express your own personal opinion. So you don't get to express your own opinion. You cannot disagree, and you cannot agree. You don't get to sing its praises either. Even if you really, really, really agree or really, really, really liked it, you don't get to say that. In a summary, it is free from your personal opinion. Also, please don't open with, in this article it says, or this video was about, because that's really stinky. You're not trying hard enough. Okay, let's try harder. Let's try 6th grade hard or more. When you're writing this, I need you to remember to, I just put myself right on top of that text. Couldn't remember where it was. You need to remember to attempt to remember what you read or what you watched. When you don't allow yourself to go back to the text, it makes it easier to avoid that plagiarism factor. Also, write the summary in your own words. Remember, AI generators, that's not your own words. That counts as plagiarism. And in some cases, depending on where you are and what you're doing, like if they find you doing things like where you just copy and paste stuff, or you're not coming up with the words from your own brain to your own hands, then they can completely either like kick you out of the university or the school. They can flunk you for the entire class. You'll have to take it over again. It's just not worth it. Try. And then after you have written your entire summary, that is when you get to go back and revisit the source to confirm information. So try to do it all from memory first. Then go back to the passage and be like, okay, is this actually what it said? And review it. Doing that extra step not only shows like your maturity as a student, but it also helps you get higher grades, y'all. It's amazing. It's crazy, right? So just like in math, there is a formula. We talked about the formula for creating that, like the central idea statement, right? Where it's like identify the text, use a verb, talk about the topic, and then make sure you put some of the big idea in it. So it's that smaller formula. It's just kind of blown up a little bit bigger. There is 2 different sides. So there's a nonfiction situation or a fiction situation. So you still have to include that main idea or that central idea. You only include the important ideas. Like, don't talk about how the blue shirt, like this is not the time to be super descriptive. Keywords, always the keywords, and it has to be your words. It cannot be anybody else's except for your own. And so there's two different things. So you're going to take a little bit of time, go ahead and redraw this little chart picture thing. This is also hanging up in the classroom. So if you are lost, hopefully that will help you. You just got finished drawing that chart. Go ahead and flip that piece of paper over, because on the back side of it, it has the practice with me situation, and you are going to actually physically practice instead of doing two separate lessons. Because it's just taking, hey, we're going to take that one little small central idea statement that we've been practicing for the last 3 or 4 lessons. We're just going to take that and we're going to like expand it just a little bit more. Then I just put these two together because there's a more important situation of kind of figuring out what's needed and what's not needed. So practice with me. You should have a highlighter. You should have all that stuff with you. So remember, the very first thing we're going to do is go through those 4 steps, the 4 steps of creating that central idea statement. The first thing that we're going to do is circle the title. Well, this one is a little bit different, right? So it doesn't have the title up here because it is actually from an excerpt. So it's like they've taken, hey, this is this whole article or this is this whole book, and they've said, hey, I just wanted these 2 paragraphs. These are the only 2 paragraphs. So that is actually where the title is. And we can tell because it says it's from A Life Without Gravity. And when it's in quotation marks, it means that, hey, somebody else wrote this. And then Robert Zimmerman is the one that wrote it. We're going to highlight subheadings, headings, all those things. In this case, we don't really have any of those. So let's just go ahead and number our paragraphs 1 and 2. And then if there were any pictures, this is where you would read those captions, look over any graphics that are on that page, all that fun stuff. All right, the next thing we're going to do is read the text and try to determine our structure. So let's read the text. Don't just listen to me read it. I want your eyes to physically be reading it as well. Our bodies are adapted to Earth's gravity. Our muscles are strong in order to overcome gravity as we walk and run. Our inner ears use gravity to keep us upright. And because gravity wants to pull all of our blood down to our legs, our hearts are designed to pump hard to get the blood up to our brains. In space, the much weaker gravity makes the human body change in many unexpected ways. In microgravity, your blood is rerouted, flowing from the legs, which become thin and kind of stick-like, to the head, which ends up being swollen, right? Which swells up. The extra liquid in your head makes it feel like you're hanging upside down or have a stuffed up nose. That sounds a little scary. I don't think I'd really want to do that. I mean, it would be fun to float, but okay. Anyways, so what is the structure? Well, yeah, it's describing space and gravity and like what happens with gravity. But more importantly, like what I see is in this very first paragraph, it's talking about what happens to our blood when we are in the effects of gravity. And in the second paragraph, it talks about what happens to our blood when we have some, like a lower pressure of gravity or microgravity. Oh, excuse me. So in this case, our structure would be a compare and contrast situation. So compare and contrast, you're going to write that. I'm going to go ahead and put myself right back down there because, yeah. The next thing that we want to do is go ahead and scan back over it and think about, all right, so we're comparing and contrasting the concept of Earth's gravity versus gravity in space and what it does to our blood. So let's think and let's just go and see if we can find some of the details or evidence that even prove that that's what this is about, right? We have to be able to prove it. So our bodies are adapted to Earth's gravity, muscles overcome, rock and run, da 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 da. Gravity wants to pull our blood down to our legs. Our hearts are designed to pump to get more blood up to our brains. So that kind of is like, hey, this is a pretty big detail. This is pretty big evidence. As I keep reading, like the weaker gravity makes the human body change. That is like, that shows me, hey, I'm getting ready to switch topics on my reader. And then it talks about the extra liquid in your head, kind of makes you feel like you're hanging upside down or have a stuffed up nose. So those would be like details and evidence that prove that it's a compare and contrast situation with gravity and blood and how that all comes into effect. Thesis statement. Is there a thesis statement? So a thesis statement is usually in the introduction. This isn't really an introduction. I mean, it's the first paragraph, so I guess you could consider it an introduction. If I were to say, hey, this is a thesis statement, I would say it's probably this very first sentence, like our bodies are adapted to Earth's gravity, because essentially what they're doing in those two paragraphs, paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, is that they are trying to prove to you that our bodies have adapted to gravity. So that makes sense, right? I mean, a thesis statement is essentially just saying, hey, this is what I'm going to prove to you in my writing. So I think that's a thesis, but it's not a very good one. So we're just going to go with it. On the back, oops, I've lost some words here. It'll show up. On the back of it, so what is the main idea of the passage? We're going to try to do this without looking at the actual reading. So what is the main idea of the passage? Well, the main idea of the passage is we're comparing the differences. We're comparing and contrasting the difference between gravity on Earth and in space. Like that's the main idea of the passage. That's why it's there. 2 details to support the main idea. Well, we highlighted those and we talked about them. So on the Earth's gravity forces our bloods. Oh, it's not supposed to be into our legs. It's supposed to be from our legs. Yikes. Oh, no, wait. Ha, my bad. On Earth, we're talking about Earth. On Earth, gravity forces blood into our legs, so our hearts pump faster, to like harder to get blood into our brains. I was not focused. And in space, that's supposed to have a comma. The weaker gravity causes the blood to like reroute and become thinner. Then our legs get like thinner, right? And this causes us to feel like stuffed up because the blood like is more in our heads. And then let's write a brief summary of the passages that we have. So the very first thing we want to do is that IVTBI, that the must-do situations. Identify the text. We need to IV. V is verb, T is for topic, and BI would be big idea, right? So IVTBI. So introduce the text, and then we need to give a verb. And that would give us our central idea statement. So put your central idea statement down. And once you have your central idea statement down, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to give one sentence for each one of those paragraphs. So I'm just going to use these same 2 sentences. And mine is going to say, in the excerpt from Life Without Gravity by Robert Zimmerman, he compares how life without gravity affects humans. That's my central idea statement. Like, there's no way around that. There are some punctuation situations because you just type it, write it out really fast. You don't have to worry about it. And then I'm going to use those exact same sentences from up here, the 2 details, because I had 2 other paragraphs, like there was 2 paragraphs, and I need a paragraph about on Earth, and I need a paragraph about on like in space. So on Earth, affects humans. And then because I already said Robert Zimmerman up here, on the next, like whenever I refer to that author again, I can just use his last name. I don't have to do first and last name. It's kind of a, I don't know, what do you want to say, like a character situation, or like it's a known reason to not have to write so much. Sorry. All right. So Zimmerman explains how on Earth, oops, probably should have fixed that. See, again, like you just kind of write it down and then you go back in and edit it later. On Earth, gravity forces blood into your legs, so our hearts pump hard to get the blood into our brains. And in space, the weaker gravity causes the blood to reroute, become thinner, and this causes us to feel stuffed up. Do not, for the love of all things human, draw just an arrow. Don't be that guy. Don't be that kid. Don't be that girl. Okay? Don't be that student. Go ahead and take the time. Practice your handwriting. it's going to be a lost art before you know it. So when you go and you are working on your central idea statement and you are told to write a summary, all you have to do is do that central idea statement that we've been working on for the last week and make it bigger. So add a sentence for each like subtopic or subheading or whatever. And it will sound so much better than I really like this and all that stuff. These notes are going to go into your gray folder. You will be able to use them later on. If you have skipped all of this, it will show when we do our mastery check. So make sure that these notes go into your gray folder. Put your highlighter away. Go ahead and start cleaning up. And I will talk to you soon.